Hello everybody, welcome back to Kazoop Art. And this is going to be a follow-up video on my previous one about artist's block. And with this one, I want to get into how I stay inspired. Because to me, overcoming artist's block is just one piece of this puzzle. And what I found is whenever I've had artist's block and used my methods to get out of it, then I have the next challenge of staying inspired and making sure that I do whatever I can to avoid getting into artist's block again in the future. So I'm just going to speak from my own experience and I hope this helps you. So the first main thing for me is that, well, I am a student and I love to learn. Right now I am learning about the human body and drawing anatomy and figure drawing and also gesture drawings. And it's going well. But I will say that I've been drawing the human figure now for a month, and while it is fun to keep on learning, sometimes I do need to learn something new. So, one of the main things that I always tend to do is take a few drawings or even a day and just drawing something I've never drawn before. And while at first my drawings might be pretty basic and not that accurate, and that's okay. And what I have found is that over time, as I do it, I start to learn how to draw these new things better. And that just helps to keep me inspired to keep learning because I know I can get to that point of being able to do it pretty well without much reference. However, there is a trap with this mentality and this approach in that there are times where I have gotten into a cycle of just learning new things and moving on to the next new thing whenever I get to a good place with what I was learning before. And I suppose that would be considered a good thing because I would just keep learning and learning more and more. But sometimes forcing myself to learn new things all the time does get to me, and I'll take a break. So, moving on, the next thing is looking at the works of other artists. And I usually just go on to DeviantArt and just search for artists. Most of the time I look at the works of artists that I'm already watching on the site, and other times I do actually look for new artists and new art. And sometimes I do look at art that is very, realistically rendered, and some art that just looks real. And yeah, I will say that it does intimidate me, but at the same time, it inspires me to keep learning, to learn how to render these environments and these characters. And sometimes I might look at a work of art that might not be that realistically rendered at all, but works in other ways, perhaps evoking emotions or leaving things open to interpretation because the rendering style might be more abstract. And that art might actually make me even more inspired because for a long time I have been focusing on simply rendering things realistically. And now I want to try and change that and make art that does have more emotion in it and does evoke more of a response from the viewer. So, the obvious trap here is comparison. And I get that. I've been there, but I have actually gotten past that. And instead of looking at works which might intimidate me because they are realistically rendered or they do just work so much better than what I can achieve at my current skill level. I know that with time and practice, I will get to that point. And Also, by observing the works of master artists, I have also realized that even they have room for improvement, and so that has calmed me down a bit. I realize that there is no real point that I can get to and just say, oh, well, I'm done, right? I've learned all I can and there's nothing else to improve. And yeah, that point doesn't exist. So yeah, overall, I don't really compare myself that much at all anymore. And if anybody does have those kinds of tendencies, you can put it in the comments below and we can have a conversation about it. And with that said, the next thing that I do to keep me inspired personally is playing video games or watching movies that make me want to draw. So, for example, recently I have rewatched Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and that movie has really inspired me to keep drawing. There's something about that simplistic yet realistic art style that really stood out to me. And then there are other movies like the works of Miyazaki, which also inspire me in different ways. And with his work specifically, it's taught me that even without realistic rendering and those minute details, art can still be created and possibly have even more of an emotional impact on the viewer. And in terms of games, lately I have been into Warframe, which I've gravitated towards because honestly I just rotate the camera around each Warframe I have and just draw it. So I use the game as a free tool I can use to look at these Warframes, these characters in all kinds of angles, which has definitely worked out because I can see these Warframes from angles that I just simply cannot find reference images for on the internet. And so now I'm going to move on to my last point here, which is something I do when everything else just fails. And I have I have overcome this artist's block, and I have this passion to draw something, and yet I just can't find that inspiration no matter what I try. And this is to simply drop down everything I'm doing and go outside. And it could be for a few minutes or an hour. And what I do is I just sit down somewhere or I walk around and I try to basically calm my mind and really closely observe everything that's around me. And you might think things like, oh, I've been here before so many times, or I've seen trees so many times, or whatnot, and oh, I know how nature looks like. And I get that, but what I've found is that every time I've done this, I've always observed something that I never even saw before. And so I have found inspiration from nature essentially every time that I do this exercise. And so I might find inspiration from the way a particular tree branch looks, or the way a certain animal behaves, or the way that the sunlight hits a particular object at a certain time of day. And so this last method has basically worked for me every time. And if none of these methods work for you, then please post down to the comments below and I can try and help you out. And so with all that said, this video has come to an end. And so if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, then please like and subscribe. And I will say that in the future, I will be creating content similar to this, where I will go over these mental blockages and tough things that we face as artists, to try and help out every artist that I can who is out there and willing to listen. And just before I leave, I do want to say that I have been on DeviantArt for 3 weeks now, and lately I have been really drawn to critiquing all kinds of artwork. And I have actually even critiqued the work of masters, specifically Mark Brunet and Bobby Chiu, of all artists. And that has taught me that I have an artistic eye, and perhaps I might actually be able to be a great art teacher one day. And let me know in the comments below if you would like this sooner rather than later. I would like to start posting tutorials on my channel and possibly even just start teaching the way that I approach art now and the way I look at composition and color and use all of these visual elements together to create works of art. Because at the end of the day, ultimately, I do feel called to teach art. I just have no idea where to really begin. So I suppose it might even be on this channel. And now this video has come to a close. So I hope my methods here will help you to stay inspired, and goodbye. I wish you all a nice week ahead.